Welcome to From the Honeycomb podcast. I am your host, Katerina. Join me as we explore stories of fearless female entrepreneurs and inspiring women in architecture, construction, engineering, and beyond. Each episode is a captivating blend of topics that resonate with the soul. Whether you're here to learn more about entrepreneurship, architecture, holistic living, or just need a little extra inspiration, you've come to the right place. So sit back, relax, and let the buzz of positive energy spark your curiosity. All right, well, welcome to the last solo episode with me, Katerina, your host. You're going to have to excuse me. It's been a minute. I just looked. It's been almost a month and a half since I last sat down to record a podcast episode. I did some batching, earlier, a couple weeks ago, almost months ago at this point. And so I had all the episodes ready for the rest of the year, except this one. And then, of course, the end of the year episode with Jesse and I, which will air. That'll be the last episode of 2024, which we haven't recorded yet. So I had a lot of plans for this episode. I was like, I'm going to reintroduce myself. I've got so many new listeners and followers, and I want to share my architectural story. Then I thought about, there's been so much happening entrepreneurially. Like, should I share that? And then life happened, and I'm actually recording this like a week later than I thought I was going to be. And I've got some travel coming up and some work stuff, like work deadlines, and some health things and family things, and just so much all of a sudden happened that I think we're just going to wing this episode. I kind of just feel like having a therapy session and just literally talking about what's going on in life a little bit with you, and just kind of also reflecting on the word of the year and just kind of giving a whole, here we are. I think this episode airs. So I guess for context, I'm recording this podcast episode November 6th. So the day after the US election too. So there's also like some weird energy in the air. And like, I kind of want to talk about that as well, because I've been reflecting on the results and just overall kind of what has been happening this year. And just this year has just been a lot. So yeah, I think this is just, I kind of need to vent a little bit. I want to do a little therapy session, and I just want to connect with you because I know it's been a minute. We've had some amazing guests on the podcast. Thank you so much for all of the women who came on the Women in Architecture series. That was so fun to put together. So it's just been a lot, but, and I might be all over the place because it's been a minute. I just realized, like I said, I had to make sure everything was hooked up properly, and I sat down, I was like, I think it's been a minute, but let's just see where this goes. So as we begin every episode, we share something that we are grateful for in the present moment. And so what am I grateful for in the present moment? I usually have something picked out or figured out before, but I did not have a chance to think about it right now. But I would say the first thing that comes up, I would say, is my support network right now. The people around me that I have who are supporting me, both through personal things, through emotional things, through business things, through just the ups and downs of life, especially this last year. I am really grateful for the people who I've been able to check in with, and I feel like I am there for them, they are there for me, and there is just this solid group I have of people, and I just have to say, like, it has just been making so much of kind of this shit show of a year possible, knowing that I have these people that I can reach out to, and so that is something that I am really grateful for. Hi, it's me, Katerina. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share with you something that can change the trajectory of your life. If you are ready to start your own architecture firm but are feeling overwhelmed by where to begin, I understand, because I felt the same way when I first embarked on my entrepreneurial journey. This is why I have created the ebook, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. This comprehensive workbook contains everything I wish I had known before starting my own firm. From building a solid business plan to creating your brand, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm offers a step-by-step guide tailored to your timeline, whether you're launching your firm today, next month, or in a few years. Dive into essential topics like financial planning, organization strategies, and how to secure your first client, all in one convenient resource. That's right, you don't have to spend hours researching. I have done that for you so you can focus on building your business. And that's not all. With your purchase, you'll also receive an exclusive meditation for business owners, mindfulness tips, a crystal guide for support, and gratitude exercises to help you stay focused and positive throughout your journey. Turn your dream of having your own firm into a reality with the Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. Click on the link in the show notes to get your copy today. Now, let's dive into the episode. So last time I did an entrepreneurship update was probably end of summer, I think it is. Like this is really bad. I did not even prepare. But I'm trying to think, there's a lot that's happened, and I share a lot more in my newsletter. So if you aren't subscribed, subscribe to my monthly newsletter. There I shared kind of what this last few weeks have been like, a few months, every month I give an update, I guess. But just thinking about, because today's the 6th, tomorrow's the 7th, so the newsletter is going to come out. And this particular newsletter is going to come out with a situation that happened a couple weeks ago now that had to do with a client and a lawsuit. I won't be sharing too much about this on the podcast because it's a platform that reaches a larger audience than my newsletter. But there was a situation a couple weeks ago where there was a client who threatened with a lawsuit. And I have to say that it was something I was not expecting. My second year of business. It's definitely something, unfortunately, it's a question of when will it happen, right? I live in the United States. Everybody sues everybody, it seems like. That's really the theme here in this country. And as an architect, there is so much liability that I am open to on projects. And I've heard every person I think I've worked for in the United States has had to deal with a lawsuit or two in some capacity. I just wasn't expecting it to happen so soon. Now, I think that's all I'm comfortable saying on the podcast about it. Like I said, I share way more in-depth details in my newsletter. I feel more comfortable about it in my newsletter just because this platform is on the podcast a little bit. It's a broader audience. So that was definitely something entrepreneurially that I just wasn't expecting to happen. But overall, I would say, going into this second part of my year of business, so I know my business originally was incorporated in February of 2023. And I officially started working for myself June of 2023. I see June as more of when I know it's not like my business anniversary, but that's kind of where I see myself fully working for myself. So every time I'm kind of referencing it, I would say June is when I officially started working for myself. So June of 2023. So we're now in November. So we're almost a year and a half in. Oh my gosh, it has been a year and a half in. So already the second year has just been a lot of lessons, a lot of learning, how to pivot with changes. I've had my best month profit-wise. I've had my lowest month this year profit-wise within the last few months. And so trying to navigate that, pivot with that, learn, okay, I'm starting to finally see patterns of what time of the year am I most busy? What time of the year am I not busy? When do I see clients signing projects? And I'm starting to collect this data that I know so that for next year, I know that a slow period is around the holidays. So keeping that in mind, last year in December, work definitely slowed down. People aren't taking as many meetings. You've got holiday parties, end of the year. And of course, everyone just says, let's leave it to the end of the year. Cities are closed. City staff is not working. There's a lot that goes into it as well. So thinking about just a slow period. So for example, or the holidays. So now I know, okay, if I'm slower during the holidays, great. This is a great time to take a vacation. Is there any project, like personal projects I want to work on? And, during that time as well, like what can I work on to stay busy? Do I want to just take a full-blown break? Which I have to say after this last year, I know my word of the year was create, and I have been able to create a lot of tangible and non-tangible things. So tangibly, I guess I could say my ebook, even though it's like an ebook, that is something that I'm really proud that I created this year. I also created the crew neck with a collaboration with Aloha Lovely. So creating a physical product, which I had no idea this year that I would be launching a physical product. That collaboration was incredible. Thank you so much to everybody who purchased the limited edition crew neck. That was a collaboration within of itself. And one of the things I also wanted to do is create abundance and create this freedom and create boundaries around my business. And I was just talking to my business coach actually, we almost talk every day. So this morning, actually, we were talking about boundaries, and she's like, it's been really amazing to see you in this last few months just evolve and like really become confident and like trust yourself and create boundaries, not only personal, but in business. And so that was really reassuring to know as well. Like I have not only created physical things, and I'm in an industry that creates designs, and I design homes and buildings, but I'm also creating these other things that are helping my business. And so that's where that word create, I remember loosely saying, at the beginning of the year, like, I also want to create stuff, like create abundance. And I feel like I really have created abundance. I feel like I've really created a bigger community, a bigger network through the podcast, through just connecting with other women. And so that has been incredible. So overall, just feeling good about the word create this year, but I've already started to think about what is my word going to be for 2025. And I am telling you right now, it better be like chill, less is more, do less, don't work so hard, because I feel like this year I have really pushed myself to the limit in certain ways. And on top of it, there's been a lot of personal stuff happening, a lot of family things that have come up, which if you were listening or if you've been listening for a while, or in the spring I had 2 grandparents pass away. I also had a very last minute trip to Europe to say goodbye to a grandparent, and there was a lot of that. And then unfortunately coming through summer, there was a loss during summer, and there was most recently a family loss actually a few days ago. And so that has been something this year that I was absolutely not expecting. And given all of the things that were happening, personally, there is no way I would have been able to attend the memorial services that I was able to attend, to visit the family members, to say goodbye to them before they passed away within this last year, if I did not have my own business. There is no way I would have been able to do it with a 9-to-5. And even with just some of the news that has recently come in with family, also, I was so calm when I knew that my whole schedule might change. Like, we may need to, again, fly for this service and all those little things that are going to have to change and to be done in order to process. And this is something too I'm not really comfortable sharing with on the podcast as well yet, because it's such fresh new information. But yeah, so there's just been a lot to process. But because of what I went through in the spring with having to travel I think I was gone for almost 3 weeks. Of part of it was a vacation, part of it was family time, part of it just was while working, while having my company. And it was interesting because during that time, I had one of my most profitable months to date. And I was amazed, it's okay if you have this family stuff happen, you're still able to have your business, is what I learned. So when all this new information and all these events have been happening the last few days, I have felt really calm, being like, okay, well then we just need to pivot. We'll just need to move a few meetings. Clients have been incredibly understanding. I have to say, the clients I have right now are absolutely incredible. I am so happy with the clients I have because everybody's just been really great. I've gotten really, really lucky. Yeah, there's been a few bad apples, but those bad apples get picked out very quickly. And I'm very grateful for all my clients. And so there's just a sense of calm of okay, here are some things we need to do. And then also on top of it this week, currently I am sitting in a knee brace. I don't know what I did to my knee. Literally yesterday, let me back up. I'm not, as you would say, athletic. I would say I'm fit. I like workout classes. I like hiking, but I'm not athletic. I like to do yoga. I like to do hiking. I like to swim in the ocean, just chill and float, and then maybe pedal. If the current takes me a little bit, I kind of go back to the space I was at. That's about it. And that's about as athletic. And I ski. I love skiing. So yesterday morning, I woke up and I was going about my day, having breakfast. I was setting up the computer. And some moment when I got up, I all of a sudden felt this excruciating pain in my knee. Literally, my kneecap blew up. And it has been in so much pain. I ended up going to urgent care. If you know me, I do not like going to the doctor. I do not like going to urgent care. And so when Jesse, my husband, came home and I was like, we're going to urgent care, he was like, oh shit, this is serious. You are in serious pain because you refuse to ever go to the doctor. And so I was like, yep, this is really serious. So they took x-rays. Everything seems fine. They can't figure out what it is, but I got a brace. I'm just supposed to rest and relax, which is so hard for me to do sometimes. And they're like, oh, just patience, just have patience. It'll heal. And I was like, I don't think you understand. I am trying to be as patient as possible with so many other things in life. And then just add this as a cherry on top. But anyway, so that's something that's happened this week. This year has definitely been a year of unexpected loss and unexpected gains in a way. And I am just I'm just learning to go with the flow at this point. And the flow is a rushing river rapid, but I am just going with the flow and learning to pivot. And I feel like this last year, I have really learned to just let shit go and not worry so much about little stressful moments. I think things that used to stress me out, I just don't let them stress me out. I've also created and built boundaries with a lot of people in my life, from family to friends to work to clients, and to build those boundaries of, I need to be able to protect myself, my energy, and especially with a lot of personal things that have been happening. And so I feel really confident and good about also saying no. That's been something that took a minute to learn. And I know that's always too, is like, I love to say yes to a lot of things, especially when I'm like having a slow period, which during the month of September, I had a really slow period. I had projects in the city, and then I had a client cancel a project. And like, there was a whole bunch of just slowness happening. And so I was like, yeah, let me say yes to this and let me say yes to that. And all of a sudden, October was just like, I said yes to too many things. And it was like, okay, lesson learned. Remember, don't forget you can say no. And so I'm definitely leaning into saying no more, but it's still a work in progress. I feel like we're all always a work in progress, me especially, but I have put in a lot of work this year that I feel really good about, of how much I have grown and the way I've been able to carry myself as an architect, as a business owner, as a woman now. So that has all been really, really good. Also, obviously, this week was the US election, and I kind of briefly wanted to talk about it just to share my feelings on not at all the politics, the political side of it. As you know, like I tried to never talk about politics on the podcast, but there is something that I'm kind of taking away from this election. And regardless of if you are thrilled who the new president is or you are absolutely devastated who the new president is, the feeling I had this morning when I woke up was kind of just a sense of like, you know what? It's all going to be okay. Because everything's temporary, right? When you think about it, we have this person, this individual, for next 4 years. Obviously, he can't be reelected. So after 4 years, we can move on and we'll see what other candidates will be possible in 4 years. But there was this sense of calm too, of just like, you know what? It's going to be okay, because in the grand scheme of things, it's only 4 years. And on one side, you can argue, well, 4 years is a really long time and so much can change. And like, what if, there's all these laws that go into effect and everything? But I think when you think about it in the grand scheme of your life, or even just thinking about, I don't know how old any of you are when you're listening, but like think about 4 to 5 presidents ago and that election. Like obviously it seems like, again, I don't want to get too political, but obviously these recent elections have seemed more dramatic, and like I think every time a lot of stuff is at stake, but I like don't want to dig myself into a pit or something, but I know with where I'm going with. But I feel like with social media, you're constantly around so much of the information and like opinions and voices and people's thoughts and all that. So I think that kind of has changed the election from what it was like, 4 or 5 elections ago. But even just thinking about, do we remember those elections so many years? Like it was a short period of time, those 4 years, and then you get someone new, and then there's new kinds of issues. And so what I'm trying to say is everything is temporary. It's all going to be okay. Yes, it may seem daunting that the next 4 years are going to be with this individual. And regardless, you are super happy, you are super sad. I honestly felt kind of neutral with it, because at the end of the day, like, then we're going to have somebody else in 4 years, and the 4 years are going to go by really quick, and it's temporary. Just everything is temporary. And this happiness that this individual was elected, if you have that feeling, guess what? It's temporary, because when the next individual gets elected, you may not be happy, and goes the other way. If you're not happy, you may be happy later. So everything is really temporary. And that is something that I have really focused on this last year, is if there is a moment of just feeling low, or in business, like that's a huge one I had to really focus on back in September with my businesses. I had a really, really slow month, and it was a really low time. And I just was like, and I lost a project, like I said, and just there was so much going on. I'm like, I don't know. I was like, what if next month is like this? And I just remembered to tell myself, everything is temporary. This feeling that you have is temporary. This low moment is temporary. When you have a high moment, it's also going to be temporary. And so that's kind of the mindset of going into just the next 4 years, the next day, the next month, the next decade, just everything that's kind of happening is, I just feel more like it's all going to be okay. We just have to trust that it's going to be okay. And I feel like I'm having these emotions and these feelings and just kind of this mental headspace about a lot of things in my life right now, where there's a lot of things I can control, and there's a ton more things that I cannot control. And I can focus on the things that I can control. The things I cannot control, then it just is what it is. And that has brought me a lot of peace. And I feel very mature this year from learning all of that, is learning that you can only worry about what you can control. And even sometimes that you can't, because I am a huge, huge worrier. I worry all the time about things that make absolutely no sense. But I feel like really this year, has really taught me that. And I've done a lot of work to get to this feeling, to get to this space, read a lot of books. I've worked with my coach mindset wise to really focus on it, which having my business coach this last year, she has been amazing, not only for my business, but also in a way for like therapy and just going through personal things. She has been really someone who has really helped me. And so give a shout out to Betya. Thank you so much. I really it's been a lot of work, and I've put in a lot of work this year to have that positive mindset and to have that mindset of, and there's this quote I really like is everything is working out best case scenario. And having that mindset, even when there's a really shitty low moment, remember it's temporary, just take a deep breath and know that eventually, not me, it could be minutes, it could be seconds, it could be hours, days, weeks, months. Eventually, it is all temporary. It will get better. So that's kind of the mindset, or at least what I'm telling myself is, especially with all this other information this week, it has felt like a lot of this year has been trying to keep my head above water while treading, and then just getting my head dunked into the water, essentially being waterboarded, it feels like. And there's just been so much in you coming up for air and then back down with some other bullshit. And it's come from so many different areas of my life. But I think overall, I have to say, I feel good, going into the next year, and I don't want to jinx anything. And also, actually, there's one other thing I do want to touch on too, is something I've learned this year is, and I was talking to my friend about it, is lowering your expectations. That is also something I really want to briefly talk about. Again, sorry I'm all over the place in this episode. Like I said, I literally just need a therapy session to just talk about all these things that I'm thinking about. But low expectations. Let's talk about it, because that has been also something that has been very helpful to me in this last year, is just lowering my expectations on how something is going to go. So, for example, we had a hiking trip back in August, and I thought I was semi-decently fit for it. We were going with people who were much more advanced, and I was like, I don't know, it's a backpacking trip. I've never backpacked. I haven't even trained. I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the worst person, and it's going to be the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. I actually did pretty well, and I felt really good, and I really enjoyed myself, and I was like, this is awesome, because I had low expectations. Now, I don't want it to come off as you have to have a negative feeling about something, it's all going to be terrible and then it ends up being good, but just low expectations. My expectations were you know what? I at least want to finish this backpacking trip alive, without injuries, and, do the best that I can, show up every day the best that I can, and hopefully everything works out, right? I have a very sensitive digestive system. I was very nervous about eating freeze-dried food, or was it freeze-dried food? Yeah, I think so. You get it in the baggie and then you put the hot water in it, and then it makes it into food, so it's super lightweight. It's the stuff they bring into outer space. I think that's called frozen food. No, not frozen food. Freezing, freeze-dried. I think it's freeze-dried. Yeah, where they take all the moisture out. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Dehydrated, that's what it is. It's dehydrated food, because they take out all the moisture. So anyway, ended up having no issues with the food. Everything was great. I really enjoyed the hike. I really enjoyed backpacking. I'm this is something I totally could take on. Hence why I'm a little nervous about my knee, because we are doing the second part of that trip. We weren't able to completely finish that trip back in August due to some group injuries. So we ended up calling it and saying we'll do the other half of it later on. And so that's coming up, hence why I'm a little nervous about my knee right now, and just kind of worried about why is it happening now. But I think also trusting that the universe is telling me to rest, to relax, and just pushing me to just sit on my ass for one day, because I am constantly on the go and I feel like I'm constantly doing stuff. And so that's why I'm thinking about my word for 2025 of just I want this to be a really relaxing, chill, easygoing word. So I've already started to think about it. But yeah, anyway, that I think is all I have on my mind right now. Just a few things I was going to say. Just how Q4 for the business is going. It's going actually really, really well. I signed up a new project. It's very small, very administrative, and the clients are really great to work with. And I have another small project, also very small, mostly administrative. And even though it's not designing a dream home for someone, I'm also realizing that not every project has to be the big, the best, you're designing a home and it's custom and new construction. I recognize that can't be every project. And so I'm learning to also be happy and grateful for projects with just really nice clients that pay on time, which I also want to talk about that one day. Maybe I don't know if I'll do an episode about this, but there is this interesting thing about clients and payments that I have noticed. And I was talking to my mentor about this, that it's interesting. I'm probably have to share this. It's very interesting. There are certain clients who pay too much. You send them a bill, they pay more than the bill, or they pay less than the bill. And I had a client pay like $40 over the bill number. And when I first got the amount, I was like, wait a second. Like, how did they come up with this amount? And so I went back through, I checked my invoices. It wasn't linking on my QuickBooks. That's how I first saw, or I noticed the mistake was I actually, before I cash any check and let the clients know that I received the check, I double check to make sure that the check number makes sense, because it is becoming, it's a very interesting thing where, the clients will pay a little bit more or a little bit less, and it's always, or they'll round up. And it's okay if, it's very interesting to me, the clients who round up or and that's some round down. Because do you do that with your mortgage? Do you do that with your gas bill, your internet bill? Like, I don't know. When I get a bill for something, I pay it for the amount that it is. Like, if I get an electric bill for $86.71, that's what I'm paying. I'm not going to round up to $87. So that's been something really interesting. I don't know if anybody else resonates with that. And if you're one of my clients listening to this and you have done that, just kind of curious, like, how do you do your other bills? Like, I don't know. It's a very interesting thing that I have noticed. And I've talked to my mentor about it, and I was like, hey, have you ever? And he goes, yeah. He's like, some clients will round down, some clients will round up. Some clients you're just like, where did you pull this number from? Or they'll only like read if it's a longer bill, longer invoice, they'll only do like part of it or something like that. It's just, I don't know. So that's been really interesting. That's been just a unique thing. I have to say, it has been the client relations and like the HR customer service department of my company. So I know I work for myself. I do everything essentially except my payroll, because I have not needed to expand or scale my business. That is something that I'm looking at in 2025, is scaling my business. But at the moment, I'm still able to handle a lot of that work. So the customer service and HR portion of working for myself, right, because I work for myself, has been really fascinating. The client interactions and the human psychology of my clients has been really, really fascinating. When you work for a firm, you're not exposed to kind of the billing, the client relations that happen outside of designing for the client. And now having that experience with me working with clients on the design, on the billing, and just on everything, coordination, if they have questions about this, like, it's been very, very interesting and very enlightening. And it's just been, on a psychological level, has also been really fascinating how each client is very, very different on how they work, on how they function, on how they pay bills, on how they do stuff. It's been really, really interesting, just from a psychological aspect. And it's also made me think about how I work with small businesses. And so, for example, like, I have an IT guy, and he's also a one-man show, one-man shop. And so there is a different mindset of when he sends me a bill, how I take care of it. By the way, for those bills, I pay what's on the bill. Anyway, it's just been really interesting and maybe I'll do an episode on it. I need to kind of think more about how I feel about it. But it has been really interesting with working with other clients and just seeing not only dealing with their design decisions, but then, and, other questions they may have, and then also having to deal with, invoicing questions. And like, it's been really interesting. And I know I had Katie Bandy on the podcast recently. I'll provide a link in the show notes for her episode. She really hit the nail on the head in her episode where she talks about entrepreneurship. So she's a therapist and coach, and she went off on her own a few months before I did. So we're about on the same entrepreneurship journey. And she talks about how there's certain types of personalities that do better as entrepreneurs. And that has really, really stuck with me, because I think there are so many people who think like, yes, oh my gosh, this is so great. I want to work for myself, the freedom of time, everything. But there is so much responsibility that goes to having your own firm. Not only is there the financial aspect, like, you are making financial decisions. You cannot just be throwing your money around. You cannot be spending tons of money, getting into debt with your business, because there's also consequences for that. But there's just so much that goes into it on being accountable. So there's no one telling you, hey, you got to get up, go to the job, go to your desk, work for X amount of hours. You can take breaks whenever, like, you can be on your phone for 3 hours, and there's no one who's going to walk by and be like, hey, you should be working, like, why are you on your phone? And staying organized and staying on top of it, and having, building those client relationships as well. It's been very interesting. And I think going into this next year too, of the second year of entrepreneurship and finishing out quarter 4 for 2024, already thinking about 2025. Like, I've already made a list of things starting looking into quarter 1 of 2025, which if you're an entrepreneur, you have your own business, you're going to resonate with that. Like, I sat down to look at quarter 1 for next year while I was still in quarter 3 of this year, because I was already thinking about and projecting what is quarter 4 going to look like. And then, the holidays, I know December is going to be gone before we know it. And then it's January. So anyway, now I'm just kind of going on tangents and stuff. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for sticking with me through it all, through all of these little tangents and ideas. I wanted to make sure I covered everything in today's episode, just kind of share what's been going on entrepreneurially. Like I said, if you are more interested in how my business is running, definitely be sure to subscribe to my newsletter. I'll provide a link in the show notes. I definitely go deeper into like the behind the scenes, the secrets of having my business, and I'm very transparent. I'm more transparent in the newsletter for sure than I am on the podcast, even more now. So definitely be sure to tune into that. And also, I guess I can also announce in this podcast episode a new series that is coming in 2025. So I will end that on a sweet little note. Is this year has been amazing with From the Honeycomb podcast. I have loved having guests on weekly. It's been incredible. It has also been a shit ton of work. And I am getting burnt out. Actually, well, I was burnt out. I'm kind of hanging on by a thread. And now I'm definitely feeling a little bit burnt out on producing an episode every single Friday, especially episodes that are 30 to 45 minutes. It has been a lot. Now, I have been playing around with ideas. What do I do with the podcast? I still want to do the podcast. I still want to do interviews, but I want to reduce how much time and effort I put into it. So I have come up with, starting in January 2025, the first Friday will be a From the Honeycomb podcast episode, and then it'll be every other Friday will be a From the Honeycomb podcast episode. It'll be interview, same style, same intro, everything like that. Intro or interviews, or it'll be like one-on-one with me or something like that. It'll mostly be, like I said, I've been really pivoting towards entrepreneurship. So it may be women in architecture, but it also may be entrepreneurs and business. And I'm going to have, I know this year's episode with Audrey Lau, she has an insurance company called Drafters for people who draft. So architects, designers, consultants, things like that. That has been a really popular episode because so many people constantly DM me like, hey, what kind of insurance do you have? How do you know what insurance to get? So that's an episode that I've been linking for everybody. So I want to get people on too that have to do with entrepreneurship, but also women who are in entrepreneurship. So that's all going to stay the same. But there's going to be a new series called the Abundant Architect series. So the weeks that there isn't a From the Honeycomb podcast episode on Friday, there will be a short, sweet little episode from the Abundant Architect series. And those are going to be probably 15 to 20 minutes. Still figuring out the length because I haven't recorded the first few. I'll be doing that shortly. But that will be specific to if you're thinking about starting your own architecture business. It will be bite-sized pieces of information in shorter episodes covering different topics. So there will be an episode on creating a plan. There will be one about, setting up your rate. There will be one about finding a contract, setting up a contract and getting referrals and how do you land your first project? All of that will be in the Abundant Architect series. So that's every other week. It'll be still the same channel. It'll be From the Honeycomb podcast. It'll just be the Abundant Architect series brought to you by From the Honeycomb. So those will just automatically, if you already follow, they'll automatically drop into your box or whatever it is that podcasts drop into. I don't know. It's been a day. But anyway, so that is all the news and update I have as well for the podcast. So I just wanted to share that. All right. So with that, I want to wish you all a wonderful rest of 2024. This is the last solo episode of the year. So thank you for going on these tangents with me about life, entrepreneurship, podcasting, life, election, feelings, mindset. I really, really appreciate it. This has been really therapeutic for me. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, this is the last solo episode. We've got 2 more episodes left of the year. And yeah, the final episode will air Friday, December 13th. That'll be the end of the year recap with Jesse and I. We still have yet to record that, but that should be a fun and interesting episode. So definitely be sure to tune into that. And anyway, so I hope you all have, like I said, great rest of 2024. And I can't wait to connect with you in 2025. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. If you enjoyed it, please take a moment to rate, review, and share it with your friends. To stay connected, follow me on Instagram at From the Honeycomb podcast, and you can support the podcast through the Patreon link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to my monthly newsletter where I share exclusive behind-the-scene content and tips on running a mindful and successful architecture business. Thank you again for listening, and stay curious.